You are tuned in to the Weekend Review, presented by the Prosper Group, where the right turns to win online.
Join us each week as we take a look at what is happening in digital advocacy and politics with a right-of-center focus.
Welcome to a special episode of the Weekend Review podcast. I'm Caroline Alexander with Dan Huber.
Caroline and I are taking a week off from our regular show and replacing it with a special treat that I think you'll enjoy. Last week, Quentin and I sat down with the RSLC's digital director, Annie Moore. Annie is the host of the RSLC's It's Bigger Than You Think podcast. She was gracious enough to answer our questions and tell us her political origin story.
But real quick, before we share the discussion with Annie, of course, we have to go through our digital action item of the week. So last week, we told y'all to start early and plan for end of quarter as summer comes up. Hope you all did that. This week, we want you all to engage with your inactive email subscribers. So you should have an actives list, someone who's typically engaging in your email sends, clicking, donating, interacting in some kind of way. And your inactives list is your list of emails who have not engaged, not clicked on content. So we recommend getting something catching, eye-popping, something that will intrigue your subscribers to click and engage. We look forward to being with you all next week on the Prosper Group Weekend Review. Without further ado, here is Quentin Marquez with Dan Huber and Annie Moore.
Today's Weekend Review guest joins us from the Republican State Leadership Committee. In 2020, the RSLC had what can only be described as a banner year. With redistricting on the horizon, Republicans across the United States defended all 59 Republican state legislative chambers, flipped 2 additional chambers, added a Republican trifecta in Montana and New Hampshire, and brought the total number of trifecta states to 23. Heading up digital for the RSLC, our guest played a pivotal role in these 2020 victories. During the next cycle, the committee will continue its crucial role of expanding the bench of dynamic Republican leaders and charting the course for the conservative movement's future. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast a creative and innovative woman who's setting the tone for right-of-center leaders in digital and politics. She hosts the RSLC's It's Bigger Than You Think podcast. Welcome to the Weekend Review, Digital Director of the RSLC, Annie Moore.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Annie. We appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. What you and the RSLC accomplished in 2020 was quite impressive, and I'm very intrigued to get your take on the impact digital is having for conservatives at the state level. But before we do that, I have a question I always like to ask political and campaign professionals when they join us. Can you tell us a little bit about your political origin story? How did you first get involved with campaigns and politics?
Yeah, so I grew up in Indiana, and in 2012, I was 14. So during that presidential campaign year, my mom got involved, and in Indiana, you might know this, you have to have 600 people, I think, per county or something like that to get somebody on the ballot. So We were out there trying to get Rick Santorum on the ballot so that, we could vote for him in the primary or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Well, not me, I wasn't old enough to vote, but so people could vote for him, And so I was out there in the Walmart parking lots hounding people to get their information. And I was like, hey, are you registered to vote? Can we get your signature? Blah, 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 whatever. And so that's kind of how I got my start. And then I was door knocking for Joni Ernst in 2014 in her Senate race. And then when I went to college in 2016 in Central Tennessee, I, did a little canvassing for some local candidates. And then 2018, I interned for Marsha Blackburn and Bob Corker at the same time, which was really interesting because Bob Corker was retiring from the Senate and Marsha Blackburn was running for his seat. So I heard a lot of things when I was working in both of those offices, which was very entertaining. And I worked for the Heritage Foundation as well as the Beacon Center of Tennessee, which is a state think tank in Nashville. And now here I am with RSLC. So that's kind of, I hopped around, did a little campaigning, interning, so here we are.
That's great.
Yeah, I know a lot of us started on the field side of things and moved into digital. I think all three of us certainly have. Curious though, what impact did digital have for the RSLC in 2020, and how's that changing for 2021 and beyond?
So in 2020, we started investing super heavily in digital, which was a really cool thing, I think, because a lot of, state level candidates, campaigns, us as a committee, we hadn't really done that before. And as you both know, like digital's the future. So being able to invest like that was awesome. We started a digital fundraising program and really were able to jumpstart that. A lot of people told us that we were never going to be able to raise money online. We were just another, acronym out of DC organization. And we were like, okay, well, we're certainly going to try. So after 5 months, we were actually profitable and we ended up raising $4.5 million last year in 8 months, which was, astounding, honestly. And so the partners that we worked with were integral to that. And, building those relationships and everything has been, very, very strong for us as like an organization. And in 2021 and 2022, like we're just going to keep on chugging. The more, like, we've done a lot and being able to like build it is great, but you have to build it and keep pouring into it to make it like a real thing that continues to grow, even after those of us that are here leave the organization. So like even just Q1 of this year versus Q1 of last year, we saw a nearly 19,000% increase in our digital fundraising, which is just insane. Our average donation last year was $31, I think, over that like 8 months that we raised the $4.5 million. Our average donation on our online fundraising this year so far is about $23. So it's really showing that like the grassroots are motivated and they are, invested in state legislative races and, some of the statewide races as well that we work with, which is a really cool thing to see. So I think we're just going to keep building, keep chugging, and keep growing, hopefully.
That's great. Definitely keep chugging along and doing that. Now, part of your digital that you started earlier this year is the RSLC started the It's Bigger Than You Think podcast. What can you tell us about the podcast?
It's such a fun project to be able to kind of, I was looking at, what the RSLC does. And I think that working with state candidates, people don't really realize that most of the policies that most impact our everyday lives comes from state politics. And so being able to take those kinds of stories and interview the kinds of people that might not be getting in front of the audiences that we, have more access to as a national organization, being able to get them in front of those audiences and tell their stories has been a really, really cool thing. So we bring some of our elected officials on, state ledge, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, ag officials. We also talk to, strategists. So our audiences range from, people in the Beltway to people who are like, in the heart of the conservative movement, the grassroots, as well as more like center right people as well. So it's been really cool and really interesting to be able to like interview these people and help them to tell their stories, and kind of talk about how everything that they're doing is really affecting like their communities. And so even like when you have like a Democrat governor and a small business owner who, his business shut down, like we want to give him like a platform or her a platform to like tell their story to a larger audience. So it's been really cool.
So in your role, I'm sure you get a good sense of how Republican candidates are using digital across the country. When it comes to the state level, where are Republican candidates excelling and where do you see the greatest opportunities for improvement amongst our bench?
What's really cool and really encouraging to see is how digital is kind of leveling the playing field for state level candidates. So a dollar really goes further in a state level campaign than a national campaign where there's millions of dollars that are pouring in, right? So like even, 10, 100, 150, whatever it is, those dollars are buying a lot more things with digital than they would like at a national level. So they're able to get in front of more people for a cheaper price. So they're able to, buy ads on Facebook and build their lists and start fundraising and invest in these types of programs and also like turn out the vote. And it's been really cool to see them kind of like step into the 21st century, harness these digital tools that they now have and can afford, because like truly digital it creates access and allows people who aren't raising those millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to play and make a difference. And it's been really encouraging to like watch them do that.
Yeah. Now, talking about that access, I have one last question for you today. For campaigns, digital transformation is kind of a continuous process, and that goes for fundraising too. At the Prosper Group, we talk a great deal about, the importance of building a house file and making a long-term investment in small dollar fundraising at all levels, whether that be local, statewide, federal. Do you get a sense that state level candidates have kind of bought into small dollar fundraising as a core piece of campaign fundraising?
So we see this more on the Democrat side than the Republican side. For example, in 2019, state Republicans were outspent in Virginia by $15 million. And that $15 million, it was I think the entire spend was 17.2 million. So Republicans spent, 2.2. And then that 15 million in between came purely from Act Blue, like small dollar fundraising. So Republicans, and with the recent developments that Win Red has been able to roll out, have been huge. And we're going to be able to use those, and close the gap. And we're starting to see way more state level accounts get on Win Red and start to invest more in these digital programs. And that's kind of where we come in, right? So we are encouraging them and trying to help them to build these programs so that they're raising more money themselves and tapping into all of the features that Win Red offers, and being able to work together more as a party to fundraise, for each other. So we're working to get them the training they need and the tools they need to really step in there and close the gap. And they're doing a great job, but we just Democrats have been doing it for so long. Like, we have a lot of time that we got to make up for. So we're trying to accelerate that as much as we possibly can. And I think that we're getting there, but we obviously still have work to do. And so the more people that we are getting buying in, obviously the better for Republicans down ballot and the party as a whole.
Absolutely. And I think the RSLC has made a big difference in that area too. So we really appreciate the work you and the RSLC are doing. But well, that's going to do it for us today. Annie, I appreciate you being so gracious to chat with us. Before we go, can you tell our listeners how to find your podcast?
Yeah, our podcast is on YouTube. Just, Google RSLC. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on all of them. So, yeah, you can just look up It's Bigger Than You Think. So that's the name of it.
Annie, thank you for sharing your thoughts today and your insights into digital for our listeners. Let's talk again soon, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate y'all.
You can find our Prosper Group Weekend Review podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
If you like the show, please subscribe and share.